Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to go to Mr. Leviton. A recent Harvard working paper states that community banks' share of banking assets and the lending market has been on a fast decline since the passage of Dodd-Frank Act, and echoes the concerns of the industry that recent financial reforms and the establishment of the Consumer Protection Financial Bureau are the cause. Are you familiar with that study, Mr. Leviton?
I am.
And do you agree with the conclusions?
No, I think it's a really...
Why not?
It's not really a scholarly study. Let's start with that.
What do you mean it was not scholarly?
Well, let's how to count the ways. I think one of the most simple things is the way it treats data. The article it says, well, community banks have been shrinking since the Dodd-Frank Act, therefore it's because of the Dodd-Frank Act. That's bad logic. That's saying what's called an ex post ergo. I'm going to get my Latin wrong, but point being, just because something happens afterwards doesn't mean it's an effect. Rather, what the article completely ignores is that there's been a long-term trend with community banks shrinking, and that the article's not actually able to show any cause and effect with the Dodd-Frank Act, much less when the regulations under the Dodd-Frank Act actually go into effect, which has only been in the past year. Actually, it's ironic because in this last year, the fourth quarter of the last year, community banks grew 28% over the previous year. They actually had a great end of the year as compared to the large banks, which did not. So I think it's really hard to say that regulation is causing all the problems of community banks. Is it possible that there's a regulation or two that needs to be tweaked? No doubt. I would not make such an absolute argument against it. But it's, I think, just a serious mistake to claim that regulation is the problem for community banks. And I would note, for the Chairman's benefit, Regulation D is not a CFPB regulation and has been on the books without changes for many, many years. So the problem that you discussed with Ms. Basma Lamaskis is not one caused by any new regulatory changes.
All right, thank you very much. I think that I would like to go to Ms. Peggy Basma Lamaskis. I see that you have mentioned as the barriers to credit unions that Congress, to correct these barriers, Congress should make several improvements to the Federal Credit Union Act. One that you list is restore credit unions' business lending authority, increase the member business lending cap. Would you make more loans, mortgage loans, if we did that? I can't hear you.
Sorry. Yes.
And do you realize that there are many members, particularly on this side of the aisle, who support that?
Yes.
And have you worked with the banks so that you could have a effort to come together to support the credit unions being able to increase business lending? I mean, a lot of you say we should work together more. Can the banks and the credit unions come together around something like this?
Well, I can't necessarily speak for my brethren who are down the line here.
Have you ever talked to them about it? Have you tried? You've been around for a long time. 40 years. Have you ever talked to the banks about coming together and stop opposing your ability to expand business lending?
Representative Waters, actually today we have many issues on which we are very much in agreement. And in fact, I believe we're all in agreement that Congress could require realistic and robust cost-benefit analyses of proposed regulations, documentation, that we would all be able to give much more targeted feedback so that the result would be smarter regulation. I believe that we're all supportive of changes to Reg D, pardon me, such as increasing that limitation from the 6 It makes sense in today's lifestyles with so many people using electronic technology. I believe that we're all in agreement on changes that need to be made to the
Okay, well,
qualified.
thank you very much. I just wanted to
Okay.
mention that because that's one of the issues that I care a lot about. Mr. Miller, you talk a lot in your testimony about what's wrong with the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And you mention everything from they should go before the Appropriations Committee to have a 5-member commission, et cetera. What and why do you think those issues are important to what you need to have done to eliminate your ability to make loans?
We feel generally the structure of how CFPB was created creates a situation where there's regulation without representation from all relevant stakeholders. We believe a larger board of 3 to 5, I would prefer 5 members that are appointed, would allow for diversity of perspectives and opinions and deliberation and debate before decisions are made, before rules are rolled out.
Thank you
We
very
think
much.
transparency in an appropriations process and a budget process would make more sense, too.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. The Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Nagelbauer, Chair of our Financial Institution